Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me and it's the first time you're seeing my face, hello, what's up? My name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So I hope that's why you're here, because that's what's going to be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in, the continued support. I really do appreciate it. So today for you, I'd like to welcome you to the very first installment of my new 2023 Birthstone Recommendations series. And for this installment, we will be focusing on the Birthstone in the month of January, which is Garnet. So if you have a January birthday, or you just really like Garnets and you'd like to see some recommendations based off of the folklore, the creation, the myths, the history behind the stone, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talking some books. Okay. So yes, we'll be focusing on the January birthstone of Garnet, and it looks like this. This is the standard stone that most people see when they think of Garnet, this deep, almost purpley red color stone. And fun factoid about the Garnet in January, most months have two birthstones because of the ability of being able to gather the stone for sale. January, however, is one of the few months that only has the one. So Garnet is representing its both modern roots and its traditional roots. So for all you January birthdays, you've never had another birthstone. It's always been Garnet. So you are definitely in the rarity. Now, our first recommendation will be based off of the name of Garnet and where it comes from. So Garnet is actually originated from the Latin word granatum, which translates to seed. And it's referred to, this term, as the popular color that the red garnets have because they resemble the red seeds of a pomegranate. So because of this little interesting factoid, my first recommendation is, of course, Scarlett St. Clair's A Touch of Darkness. This is the first installment to her Touch of Darkness series, and this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. And if you've ever know the story of Hades and Persephone, Hades lures Persephone and she eats the pomegranate, and she has to stay in the land of the dead. Now, that's the base story. This story definitely goes way further into that. We get a really steamy, spicy love story between Hades and Persephone that's pure romance, pure soulmates, the whole 9 yards. This thing's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books. And it does have a companion series where you actually get to see Hades' perspective, which is it's just called the Hades series, and the first installment for that is Game of Fate. So you do get a companion series of each book getting the different corresponding viewpoints. However, this installment right here follows Persephone, and there we go, get rid of that glare. Try to get rid of it. So I love this series. It is not completed yet, but it will be completed in this year. If you love Hades and Persephone retellings, I think you will enjoy this. And it also represents Garnet because we get to talk about pomegranate seeds and the colors. So there we go. The next recommendation I have is based off of the color. Garnets are actually a type of mineral group, and the minerals that make up the garnet consist of pyrope, almandine, sespertine, gossamer, and andradite. I hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. But the beautiful thing about garnet is because the way the minerals combine, and depending on how many amounts of each mineral you get, garnets can actually change their colors in certain lights. They can be blue in fluorescent lights, and they can also become a very deep red in incandescent lights. Most of us know this as the deep red color, so I'm going to be basing a recommendation off of that color, and that is Empire the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This was one of my top books of 2022. This is the first installment in the high dark fantasy series, adult series by J. Kristoff, following our main protagonist, Gabriel de Leon, who is a Silver Saint and the last remaining member of the Silver Saints, who were an organization designed to eradicate vampires. But the sun has failed, vampires are now ruling the world, and Gabriel is telling his story to, I believe, what was his name? Oh, they don't give his name here. Telling his story, and this is just the first part of his story in a back and forth interview style. This thing has it all. It's got murder, it's got romance, it's got action, it's got paranormal, it's got blood, it's got gore, it's got gay vampires. It's got it all. This thing is phenomenal. I cannot not talk about this book. This thing is stunning. Now, I'm recommending it based off the American cover. This is the American edition cover. If you look at the UK edition cover, it's a lot prettier, but it doesn't have that kind of garnet feel as well. But I highly, highly recommend this one if you love vampires, if you love action, if you like characters who don't give a fuck and say great fucking one-liners like fuck my face. Like, that is literally one of the best lines of this book, and it is dripping in blood, dripping in gore, dripping in sex, dripping in just fucking awesome. I had a great time with this book. Our next recommendation based off the Garnet comes from its location. Garnet's, the most prominent producer of garnets today is the African continent, but you can still find them in other places such as Brazil, India, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. I don't have any books that are based in Brazil or by Brazilian authors, but I do have a recommendation based off a book from an Indian author, and that is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. This is a memoir that I read a few years ago. I no longer own a physical copy of it as I lent it out to somebody and I never got it returned to me. But Dr. Paul Kalanithi was a neurosurgeon who was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And he wrote this book as a memoir starting from when he was just in med school to becoming a full-fledged doctor to becoming a patient and trying to figure out throughout his time span of what makes life worth living. This is a moving, heart-wrenching, tear-jerking of a book. This thing is fucking phenomenal. It's not very long, but it packs a serious, serious punch. So if you're looking for something that's really going to tug on your heartstrings and make you think and look at life a completely different way, this thing is spot on. I gave this thing 5 stars when I read it. It was stunning. And the foreword written by Paul Kalanthi's wife is just, oh. I usually am not a big fan of forewords and things like that in books, but you definitely want to read this one because she just, oh, so moving. The dedication she made to her husband, you know that their love story was something pure and true and just, this thing is absolutely stunning, and it will make you think, it will make you look at things in a different light, and it will make you value what you have. It's very, very moving, very, very heart-wrenching. So definitely a good recommendation for this one. Our next recommendation comes from the creation of a garnet. Garnets are formed when metamorphic rocks are subjected to heat and pressure that break the chemical bonds into the rocks and cause the minerals to recrystallize. They can also be found in igneous rocks. And if you know anything about igneous rocks, they are the fire rocks. They're the rocks that are produced where there's high temperatures and flame and things of that nature. So there was only one recommendation for this, and that was the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. If you have not read any of the Throne of Glass series, I highly recommend this series. I literally finished it just recently, and I just adored this. Our lead character, Selena Sardathians, how we were introduced to her as, does metamorphose into something else throughout the series, just as a garnet is formed. Excuse me. I'm rocking a cold, guys. She does change and grow throughout the series and develops a unique fire style element of power. I mean, her nickname is Fireheart for a reason. But you do have to read every single installment of the series. So I am recommending Throne of Glass. This is probably my least favorite installment of the entire series because Selena's actually kind of annoying in it. I'm not going to deny this. But as you read the series, she gets more gung-ho, more strong-willed, more relatable, more lovable, and more of a badass. And she's already a badass in this one. So I definitely recommend this series, the whole series for the Garnet Stone, because it's fucking Throne of Glass, guys. Like, I couldn't not recommend the series off a stone that literally looks kind of like fire in certain lights. So, yeah. The next couple of recommendations are actually based off the folklore and myths of the Garnet. And one folklore myth that we have is that that streams through majority of all of the myths is that garnets symbolize protection. That very often that the wearer of the stone is protected from evil or any type of evil forces. So I have 2 recommendations actually for this. That is the Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first installment and second installment in the Core Thorn of Roses series. And the reason I picked this is because garnets represent a very protective element. And in the first installment, we have Feyre, who has to go and protect the man that she loves, which is Tamlin. And you see this alpha female. You see her as a mortal, as a human, go to the greatest odds to defend the man that she loves and protect him from a fate that she doesn't believe belongs to him. And in the process, she meets Rhysand, who features more in this novel. And in this novel, we see him go above and beyond and find out how protective an alpha he is. So I wanted to give a protective alpha rec for both female and male for this, because both females and males can rock some garnets. We both can rock these very, very well. And I wanted to emphasize these. So another Sarah J. Maas series has appeared on this recommendation list, but this is stellar. A lot of people don't like this installment. They'll read this and they won't move on. Trust me, you'll want to move on. I actually have a reading vlog of me reading this entire series, and I will link it here for you guys so you can actually see my experience of reading this for the first time, and you can see the gambit of emotions that is ripped from me because of Rhysand's alpha protectiveness. And I just gushed about this one when I read it the first time. So 5 stars, both of them. Let's see if we can get these all up here. There we go. My next recommendation is based off of the fact that a lot of times garnets are used as symbols of love and friendship. So I have a recommendation called Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. And I picked this one because this is a friendship recommendation. This is a friendship between 2 females. We follow Saphia, who is a truth witch, and she can discern truth from lie, which is a very coveted power in the Witchlands. This is the first installment to the Witchlands novel series, and the Witchlands is the area that they are living in. And we also have Iseult, I think is how you pronounce her name. She's a thread witch, and she can see the threads that tie and bind people together, whether it's good or bad. She just can't see who is bound to her. That's the only threads that she can't see. And their friendship is put through the trials. Saphia was born on the right side of the tracks, Iseult was born on the wrong side of the tracks. So it's a very unlikely duo, but when they meet, they form this bond that's just beautiful and strong, and they support each other. Where one falls, the other one picks them up, and vice versa. It's a beautiful, beautiful friendship in this story. So I definitely wanted to recommend this. Since garnets represent friendship, this is one of my best friendship recommendations that I have, because the friendship between these 2 is stunning. It is not trying to one-up each other. It is not trying to better each other. It is trying to build each other throughout the entirety of this book. It is a platonic, sisterly love between 2 females that any girl who has a best friend can relate to. Definitely a keeper. In medieval times, garnets were actually used for remedies for inflammatory diseases. So they had a medical use as well. So my next recommendation comes off of that, and that is Diana Gabaldon's Outlander. This is the story of Jamie Fraser and Claire Randall. Claire Randall is a nurse during World War I that literally falls back into time into Scotland in the 1700s during the Scottish uprise. Now, Claire and Jamie's romance is fantastic. It is amazing. But the reason I picked this book to represent Garnet is because Claire, as I said, is a nurse. And there are many, many times in this book that her knowledge, her medical knowledge, she has to revert back to what she learned. And she's actually able to utilize her medical knowledge in the 1700s in a way that still doesn't look like witchcraft, but yet will still extend the life of a lot of people during that time frame. And one specific instant is a hand reconstruction scene. There is a graphic, non-con rape scene in this book towards Jamie. There is a very, very graphic one. And in the process, his hand is just mangled. Claire, through her medical knowledge, actually reconstructs his hand and is able to keep it. And then there's this romantic moment where Jamie just realizes that how special Claire is, because any other person would have cut his hand off and then he would have been lame the rest of his life and not been able to survive as well as he could with 2 hands back in the 1700s. But Claire was able to restore it and fix it. And this is literally one of my favorite books, so I definitely had to get it on here for sure. And the fact that Garnet is representative of medical properties clears it. The next recommendation I have is based off of the myth and folklore that garnets provide the wearer with unwavering affections and loyalty. People who wear garnets on a regular basis are known to be very, very loyal companions. And so my recommendation for loyalty is through the Looking Glass Wars. This is the first installment through the Looking Glass Wars series by Frank Fedor. This is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. In this story, Wonderland is a real place. Alice is a real girl. The Queen of Hearts, Aunt Red, she's real. She has come to take over Wonderland. And Alice has to flee through the pool of tears with her companion, Hatter Madigan. And that's the reason I'm picking this book for loyalty, because Hatter Madigan, after they go through the pool of tears, they become separated. Alice ends up in England as an orphan until she's adopted by the Liddells. But Hatter Madigan ends up all over the world. He's constantly, through the entire of the book, looking for Alice because he is so loyal to his queen. And eventually he finds her and we get back to Wonderland. And then that's where this story ends, because this is the first installment in a trilogy and I have yet to read the rest of the installments. But this thing took me for a ride that I was not expecting. I loved the twist that this story gives Alice in Wonderland. It makes it a real place. Alice is a real girl, and the story that she tells the deacon, he got it all wrong. So the Alice through the Looking Glass story that we know and love is completely wrong. This is the real story. So I'm really anxious to continue on with the rest of this series to find out what actually happens, but I definitely want to put this on the recommendation because Hatter Madigan's loyalty. There are so many loyal characters in all of these books, but his stands out because he literally travels through time, through space, to all different dimensions, deals with all different types of trials just to find her through the entire of the book. And then when he finds her, he's just as loyal as he was at the beginning. It's fucking stunning. I loved it. The next recommendation is based off of the use of a garnet, based off some of the uses. Due to their properties, garnets have become very popular among royalty. So you will find them in a lot of king's crowns, royal jewels, things of that nature. So because of that, I wanted to recommend a historical fiction based off of monarch, and I recommend Philippa Gregory's The Lady of the Rivers. This is the first installment to the Plantagenet and Tudor novel series by Philippa Gregory. This series extends, there's quite a few installments of the series. It's a very long-standing series, and this is the very first one. And this follows the widow Jacquetta, Duchess of Bedford, and her time in the English court under King Henry VI after marrying Richard Woodville after her first husband has passed. Throughout this story, you see her forge her path and becoming a prominent member of the court, which puts her daughter Elizabeth in direct line to become the future White Rose of York. So this is the mother of Elizabeth Woodville. Now, the thing about Jacquetta is that she is kind of on the witchy vibe a little bit. She's rumored to have worked with alchemy and things of that nature. So there's more to this woman's story other than just that she's a future queen's mother. She has her own story. She's strong in her own right. And this installment is fantastic. I read it a few years ago and I just love Philippa Gregory's writing. She's one of my favorite authors. And this thing is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Highly recommend this one. I don't want to stand. Another use for garnets is when garnets break, they break in irregular grains. So they have a use more than just fashion. I mean, they are beautiful. When you see them out, they are just bam, in your face. But they have an actual practical use as well. And you can find a lot of garnet fragments because of the way they fragment in the smaller grain pieces. You can find them in sandpaper, sanding belts, discs, and strips of that nature. So a lot of abrasive things. So my next recommendation is actually an abrasive recommendation. This next recommendation has abrasive triggers that are not for everybody. These books have triggers that are designed to upset you, to make you feel uncomfortable. So this next recommendation is Pam Godwin's Deliver, and it looks like this. We feature Liv and Josh's story in this, and Liv is training Josh. She has kidnapped him and is training him to be a human sex slave. that will eventually be sold to a master. In this book, we experience non-con, human sex trafficking, dubious consent, murder, BDSM training scenes, and mental breaking scenes. The first part of this book is so intense, it is so unnerving, it is so unsettling that I almost didn't finish it. I listened to this on audio, that's how I experienced it, and it was so intense that I literally felt like they were trying to tell me how to break somebody. I was very unnerved and uncomfortable for majority of this book. But the way Pam Godwin handles these very taboo, abrasive triggers, she handles them with finesse, with beauty, with tact, and she handles them in a way that it's just abrasive enough that it makes you feel uncomfortable, but you can still tolerate it. Pam Godwin is a witch with her words. She is fucking phenomenal. This is the first installment to the Deliver series. I have read another installment to this and I absolutely loved it. The second installment actually was 5 stars for me, but I wanted to give you, because you cannot read that installment without reading this one. But this one is just, it is so intense and so mind fuckingly crazy. There is a scene where our lead protagonist, Josh, is in a box, deprived of all of his senses. And the way it is written, the way it is described, it is scary as fuck, people. It is scary. This is not a book for everybody. But if you can handle very serious triggers, very dark triggers, very grating triggers, this is stunning. This book is stunning. It is beautiful, the way it is displayed and the way these very dark elements are used. Pam Godwin handles it so well. It's a great recommendation for this. And my last recommendation is based off of an author spotlight. In every single video, I will issue an author spotlight, so an author that I have read that was born in January. And this one is Anne Bronte. She was born January 7th, so my recommendation is Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I read this last year. This is a classic among classics. We follow Gilbert Markham and Helen Graham. Helen Graham has moved into Wildfell Hall with her son, but because of her reclusive nature, Gilbert Markham is intrigued but yet kind of standoffish because he doesn't know exactly what her story is. And as our story progresses, we learn that Helen has a backstory where she came from, and she has kept a diary. She lets Gilbert read the diary, which explains everything and why she's the way she is. The romance developed between these two is one of respect and understanding and a very slow burn, but it is a stunning representation of Anne Bronte's writing. I love this story. I had such a good time with it, so I do highly recommend it. And since she is born in January, her birthstone was a garnet. Those are my recommendations based off Garnet. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you have a January birthday, let me know. And let me know if you'd like to pick up if you plan on picking up any of these recommendations, because I picked them based off of your birthstone. So you might like them. I'll see you guys all soon.